just jump straight into sort of, high level overview. Let us know about King's Oath and, Act One and what has changed, what's new, but just sort of a bridged version, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what we've recognized in this space is that, we're probably going to be in a nice prolonged bear for quite a bit. So we want to kind of just recognize in this market, how do we essentially meet the right type of demand with the right type of supply? But also what we recognize is there's an opportunity to kind of rebuild what we think entertainment content brands should look like. When we first started out, we thought we had to call ourselves a game company. And it was just a really interesting way where the meta was taking off. There was token-based economies, there was land-based economies, there was avatar-based economies, and it was in a really right fit. But as we kind of saw, a lot of those essentially eroded away. And the real problem is that starting to build a game right at the start is one of the most challenging and honestly probably incorrect things you could do, especially if you want to build an ERC20 token behind it, especially in this bear. So what we recognize is we really want to go back to our roots of building a brand. And the brand essentially is these universes we call, and Lost Realms will be the first universe. So the way we are doing it is we're doing it as a multi-act event where in each of these acts, a new either interactive experience, a new asset ownership unveils, or some new type of gameplay system is also introduced. And in doing so, it allows for people to participate at different levels while also allowing us to scale up supply. We think one of the biggest things that everyone's made a mistake in this space is that they do 10,000 collections first and then try to figure out, is there enough supply and demand to meet? And in reality, it's really tough. To do anything over 5,000 supply in this market is a really tough thing to do because, again, when we look at the live data in the market of how many active wallets actually exist, it's very daunting, especially if you look at active wallets that are actively buying and trading and selling. You started to recognize relatively quickly, we're literally talking about less than 100,000 users. And then if you go even further of how many of those are actively participating in game loops, that number drops literally down to 20, 25,000 on L1 Ethereum. I'm really speaking about at the moment right now. The wallet base is not as strong as many people would note. So our goal was okay, let's start small and build up. I think that's the right way you should be building any system, and that's what we're essentially doing. So getting into it, we've essentially have a multi-act game. We've essentially already announced what Act 1 and Act 2 will be. Act 1 is King's Oath. King's Oath is essentially our introduction of the story and lore. We have this essential fantasy world we've already introduced, and in this we have a character called the Oracle. The Oracle is this all-powerful character, and what she recognizes is that she has this amazing power to resurrect the last kings of the world, right? So this world that has already been overtaken by this unfortunate and our, of course, core enemy monster, Druk the Dragon, what she's recognized is hey, we need all the help we can get. We need not only our heroes, we need not only our allies, but also what we need, right, is we need the kings to be able to fulfill their oath to protect the promised land. So in this, we're essentially going to be building a small supply project between 1,000 to 1,500 supplies, roughly what the numbers are. The reason we say that is we actually are gamifying our supply. We're building a product experience where users in our Discord will actually be able to interact and find as many tombs as they can. Right? In order to resurrect, we need to know where all the tombs are actually buried. And this is going to be a kind of a fun little gamified experience to identify. And we've really been utilizing this kind of thesis that we call GP equals GA, greater participation equals greater access. Meaning that the greater your individual participation, the greater your access in regard to allocation of whitelists, NFTs, and other upside in our ecosystem. But also the greater the participation of the community means the greater the supply, right? Meaning that if there's enough demand to meet that supply interest, we will build it. And that's essentially what we've done is we feel that we've gamified a really fun way to find supply demand inputs, right? And essentially what those inflection points can look like. So with King's Oath, it'll actually also be a totally new collection on top of this. It'll be a PFP first collection, which is pretty exciting. And essentially what you'll realize is we actually launch these things over multiple acts. So what I'll do right now in your office hours chat is I'll just share a couple visuals real quick.
Hi.
Oh, okay.
I forgot you were home.
A couple of things here as well. You might need to mute more people.
Hi.
I'm on it.
But I'll add it here in the what I just added in the office hours chat is just a quick breakdown of what those universes look like and what that sequence looks like. So essentially, right, we have our diamonds. Those diamonds are also able to open totems. These totems then unlock Genesis PFPs, and then these Genesis PFPs unlock game worlds. This is the overall sequence. If you actually want to know everything that we're doing within the world, is we already have our diamonds out there in the marketplace. So what you'll actually see with these kings is that you'll get these like Genesis PFPs that essentially open up. They'll have their own game experience in Act 1 where they'll actually have to fulfill their oath. And by how well they fulfill their oath and how collectively the community fulfills their oath of all the other kings, it will have dynamic impact into what's happening in Act 2, and will also impact when Act 2 is unlocked. So that's kind of the fun thing that we're doing, is we're building a community-based game experience, right? Where in Act 1, we have these kings, but there's also participation still needed from the community for those who don't hold kings and may only own Act 2. They'll have different opportunities to kind of help along the way. And then this then essentially opens up Act 2, which will be the Great Summoning. And this is where we get all of our generative heroes. And that's kind of what you see all the way to the right. That's a Moonbird. That's actually the mythical Moonbird, which even looks cooler as a PFP, as an NFT, as we have some cool effects and graphics on it. And then separately, there's an Archangel there as well. And our goal is essentially to build this way where we increase supply over time. There's also other airdrops. There's also like interesting game mechanics. So in short, what you want to understand of what we're doing is that we're scaling up our supply accordingly. The earlier you are in our product experience, the more upside you're going to be getting. Any asset you get in a previous act can be used in the next act, right? So it compounds in value. And in doing so, what's been really cool is that we've been able to build a community that is excited. It's not just about how do I get into Act 1? It's also about how do I get into Act 2 and all the other acts there. And this is essentially where we've kind of done some cool gamification with relics too. But let me pause there to see if you have any questions as well or want to direct it into a different location.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for the quick catch up. I have a ton of questions just about the stuff that you've covered already, but I want to kind of wait, and we can sort of do the questions once you've kind of got through the rest of your spiel, unless you did want to do the questions now. And just a reminder to everyone, listen, I didn't say it, but most of you know the rules. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those in guest questions, and we'll make sure to get those answered for you. But yeah, if you want, you can continue. I'm kind of taking notes as you go here, and we can circle back to some of the points and dig in a little deeper.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think the big thing, just to like share a little bit of insight, is like, how is the Discord structured, right? So what we intrinsically believe as an organization is our opportunity is to build a healthy community that truly is interacting with one another. And we built some really amazing game systems in order to achieve that. But not only have we done that, that's also the relic system, but we've also gamified the roles. So again, if you look in, I just dropped this again in the chat, in Office Hours chat, you can see kind of how our roles break down across our universe. So what's kind of interesting is that your goal is trying to ascend up this, right? You want to be able to start as a redeemed user and receive your cloak. And the great thing is that as long as you come into our world, you actually are going to have a little bit of access and a chance to potentially get whitelist as well, right? For both Act 1 and Act 2. But as you go further up, right, it's greater odds and greater guarantees. And that's kind of how we structured it. It's a little bit different. So once you get Enlightened, which is the next phase, you're guaranteed a mint for Act 2, right? Which is the larger supply, right? Where we have a lot more allocation that we're able to provide, which is pretty exciting. Plus, as an Enlightened user, you'll get more access and more chances to potentially get into Act 1. Torchbearers, same thing. That's the next level up where you could actually then get 2 mints to Act 1, right? 2 mints to Act 2. And again, you double your army, which is going to be really important as you try to expand and, of course, start tackling in our tactical RPG battle loop. And then from there, the next role is Oath, which allows you to get access to both Act 1 and Act 2. And then lastly, there's council members who essentially are the holders of our tribe diamonds. So what you kind of see from here is we're creating like an amazing progression schedule for essentially everyone to understand where they are and how they can participate. And this is where the relics have become really, really amazing. What we recognize is that what we actually are building, like if you actually know what our core product is, it's not Lost Realms and it's not even Fury. It's the Discord, which we call Something is Happening. It's our ability to collect and build a strong community of people who are actively participating and supporting one another. And in doing so, we could reward them with NFTs along the way. Because in the end, it's kind of same thing what you guys have kind of built here at MVHQ. Your NFT is more than just a asset that has a tradable value on the marketplace, right? It is an asset that unlocks a community that gives you other compounding value. In your guys' case, it might be alpha, it might be friendships, it might be understanding and insights on data and diligence, it might be tooling. right? Similarly, we want to think in those types of manners as well, is that once you come into our Discord, how do we kind of help you and educate you in different ways? So not only are we doing a lot of sessions on like Lost Realms, but about half the sessions, actually more than half the sessions, have nothing to do with Lost Realms or King's Oath. We've just been doing chats to see what the community wants. So, one of the last chats we did was just a breakdown of free mint meta. Like, if you're looking at the next free mint, how do you actually understand what's a good free mint? What's the right team? What's the right background? What's the right supply? What's the right, launch strategy? And we gave like really concise breakdown to that to help inform the next users. Because again, our goal is to go after not only whales, but we also want to we also want to nurture and cultivate, right, the next wallets that are coming into this ecosystem as well. We've done other AMA sessions. We had a session literally just talking about our favorite animes and comics for an hour and a half, and we had 950 concurrent listeners. We'll probably be doing for the World Cup, right? Starts at 7 a.m. Pacific. I'm in the West Coast in the US. And people want to do like a 1 hour run up before that. So we're going to do like a 1 hour session before like the most watched live event in the world, and just do a World Cup recap, only talk about that. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get like 750 to maybe 1,500 concurrent users, stuff that the market's never seen before. We're literally breaking Discord every day with our systems. We have the most concurrent users for pretty much every event, and we're doing it 3 to 4 times a day at times. Right? Like even today, my first morning session had 1,100 people concurrently listening, over 1,700 uniques, right? That's insane for a singular Discord and a private manner all coming through. And then more importantly, right, we do 2 more sessions. And again, still having 800, 900, 1,000 people showing up. And that's what we've actually ended up building, is we've built a global audience, right? Because that's actually the amazing power of Web3, is that we have user bases in every geo or time zone, right? And we kind of break it up in 3. We have the Americas, right? North, Central, South. We have essentially Europe and Africa region and Middle East and MENA. And then essentially you have then like Russia, Asia, and Australia, New Zealand. And what's great is that in any of those time zones, we're able to capture about 800 concurrent users pretty consistently, which is really amazing. And we've only been doing this realistically for about 10 days. And I think it's still compounding, right? Relatively quickly. So with that, what's really been amazing then is that it allows us to launch our universe. And our universe is much more than Lost Realms. So kind of some of the other stuff that I could share with you. And again, if you were in one of the earlier chats when we talked about Diamond, some of this will be kind of like new will be kind of the same information, but hopefully we'll tap into other stuff. The other thing that we have is when we're trying to build this, we're allowing all these individuals to be able to get access to the Lost Realms. But the goal as well is also to give them access to all of the other universes we're building. So quickly, I'll upload as well here into your guys' room. It's just like, cool, there's a whole nother Fury universe ready. Again, some of this stuff is blocked out because we want to make the reveals look really cool and the visuals that are coming. But again, we're kind of building all of these systems where we now have a sequence to launch any given universe. And we have a pretty insane user base as well. Right. And like most people don't realize, the most powerful metric you want in this market is actually PCU. It's peak concurrent users, right? It's your peak concurrent audience. And what you actually realize is not only are we doing this on Discord, we're doing it on Twitter. And we're literally the largest Twitter event happening on Web3 on any given day.
Okay, can I jump in there? I'm going to jump in here real quick because it is one of the points that I did want to talk about. Large concurrent listeners and your peak concurrent audience and all that stuff is great. I do want to at least talk about and point out the fact that like Web3 people are easily mobilized with incentives, right? So with the Relic system, people are kind of foaming at the mouth a little bit. We're kind of in POAP mania a bit at the moment with everyone sort of chasing these POAPs. So I'm curious, is the Relic system and the reaction that you're getting from that, do you guys as a team feel that it is, people actively participating and rewarding each other, as you say, or do you think that this is mostly people that are just trying to get the Relic and trying to get an incentive, essentially just cash in on, pretend engagement? How do you guys feel about that? Because obviously there's a big spike when you guys started doing the POAP stuff.
It's a wonderful thing, right? Our big advantage is it's the POAP meets me, right? Like without sounding too cocky, right? It's the ability to build a primary individual who could share the vision and doing it around that. You're absolutely right. The POAP is an engagement tool. That's exactly what it is. But here's some interesting metrics that I'll share with you. On average, when we give out our POAPs and once the claim is done, we usually only lose about 10% of the active audience for the next 45 minutes to an hour. right? And we literally tell them, please leave. You don't have to stay here if you got your POAP. I literally will say that in the calls. And we still hold about 90% retention of those users and POAPs. The second thing that's also really interesting is that we're making them go through multiple actions in order to claim, which is way harder to bot compared to anyone else. To be honest, like you could actually bot Ryan Carson's POAP. It's actually not that hard to do. It's a lot harder to be able to bot our POAP to a certain extent. Don't get me wrong, we all pass codes, right? We all pass codes in all these worlds, and we see it in almost all the alpha groups. But that's actually intentional. We designed for that. Because what I'm doing is I'm getting awareness in all of these other sub-communities in a way that no one else has. And what's been really cool is that other people are chasing that. But in the end, if you actually are listening, what you realize is people are actually staying. So let me share some other metrics that are pretty interesting. When I'm not hosting and when there is no relic, we still get people who are showing up between 500 to 800 people for those events as well. And that's what's also really crazy. So it starts giving us an understanding that, yes, of course, there's people who are here to gamify. We unfortunately built a culture of grind. It fucking sucks. Like Web3 killed itself and they don't realize it, right? Because they put all these shitty mechanics in front of these users so that they're only incentivized to grind. But what's actually really interesting is that none of our system is grind. Our system is participation. Don't get me wrong, people are always going to want to collect relics because, again, if they believe it increases their chances. But what you realize here is that in the end, the only way that you're going to be able to be elevated is actually contributing and participating. Sure, a couple of people may be able to get relics and then may be able to win like very low odd percentages of a raffle. But what you'll see is 95% of our user base will be actually engaged users and participating. And if you're actually in like our enlightened chat, which is crazy, right? If you're an enlightened user or higher, you could literally see real engagement, honestly, better than anything I've ever seen in any Discord. I mean, any Discord really, right? And that's what's kind of crazy here is that it's real authentic engagement. I could literally do a shitty AMA for an hour right now in my chat, and I won't have to notify anyone. And if I just do it for Enlighten, we'll have 300 to 500 people show up who literally just want to ask questions and learn about the project. So that's kind of what's really interesting about this. You still always want to give incentives. Like that's how humans are designed, right? And that's the important thing. Like people think incentivizing things is bad, but in reality, what it is that most people incentivize the wrong things, right? Or incentivize the wrong actions. We're just incentivizing participation. So if you actually look at all of our metrics, what you actually recognize is we probably have the most real and sticky user base out of pretty much any Discord out there, period. But what's also even more exciting behind it is that even when we don't include the relics, the stickiness remains. So that's at least the way we're looking at it. Of course, there's going to be huge grinders that still come in, and that's still always going to be a part of it. But in the end, you still have to be able to show that you're participating in the community in order to really ascend, in order to really get the other roles. And that's kind of where we have a healthy curation process alongside this too.
Really cool. I want to talk about the culture of grind a little bit. I think it's a good topic. A little bit of a backstory for me in relation to Lost Realms and something that's happening. I actually completely faded and ignored the Discord when it came out, just because we at MVHQ and the greater Web3 space in general had already been subjected to a lot of grindy Discords where it was mysterious and like quirky and like you just had to like spam like exclamation point something, and you didn't really know what the project was about. You just wanted to like get to the next level or get a role or get whitelisted, and you'd figure it out later, right? So I thought I lumped you guys in with all of that. I said, no, thank you. I've given enough of my time to these projects. I'm not doing it anymore. So I want to talk about the culture of grind because I do think there are still people that would consider Lost Realms and the role mechanics and stuff that you have going right now as quote unquote a time rug. So I'm just curious because I know there's going to be like a free mint component, but at some point, if you're asking people to invest so much of their time in order to get a free mint, there's a lot of time, equity, and opportunity cost that goes into that. So, just generally speaking, how do you guys handle and how do you think about people who have the mindset that having to do all of this stuff and be constantly engaged and participating over and over and over again? What would your response to them be, that people that think that this is a grind and that this is a time rug?
I mean, you can't change their mind. It's up to them, right? I mean, to be very honest, I can't change the culture of the last 12 months of abuse that every Web3 project has put these users through, right? Like, you're not changing their mindset, and that's not the battle you want to fight. The battle you want to fight is those who believe, right? And making sure that you could show them to the promised land. in any type of project that you're trying to build, you're always going to have people who are either going to be naysayers or don't really align with how the product is going to be built. But if you actually talk to everyone actually in the Discord, you start recognizing it's quite different. It's quite unique and it's quite built for value. The other thing that we tell everyone is that our whole system is built to build multiple universes. And this is what our actual growth hack is, right? Sure, if you're grinding this shit, like we straight up tell people in our chat, like, yo, you're not going to enjoy this process. Like we straight up tell them, like, stop collecting all the relics. This is not going to be your advantage. I can't stop people after that, right? Like if they won't listen to what it is, you're going to let them grind in that manner. And again, that's more up to them. Right. But in the end, all I can do is properly inform them. And that's why I literally will tell people, like, please don't show up to this one if you've already done this. Right. And like we also make relics not be multiple claims on the same events as well. So, of course, we need to constantly react. Right. But like this is also why like I think a lot of projects get this wrong is they over index on a couple of the naysayers when in reality, what you're actually trying to realize is like, what is the 90% of the people who actually are enjoying this loving? And how do you keep building for them? And if you could just keep your mind there, that's how any great builder is supposed to actually execute in this space, right? And the other advantage that we also share with everyone is that, hey, you could continue to participate in our world, but this is why our big advantage is, and like our big secret is that all the rolls and relics you get compound. They're not just for unlocking the first world. They unlock all the future worlds too. So if you really do believe in our long-term vision and you're here for something that you want to be able to get first access to, just realize by being here and participating, you're going to get access to something in our universe over time, right? Whether the odds be in you or the larger like participation that you can continue to offer, that's what we're trying to build for and what we're trying to scale for. And again, this market is essentially has hit this point. And again, like you guys fall into this as well, to be very honest, right? There, as a lot of these guilds and alpha guilds, you're also stuck in playing the grind game, right? So what ends up happening is that you'll have one or two people who actually participate live. You'll then be able to see people pass that password over, and then you'll be able to get to the next level of saying like you got that. But we're not rewarding that because if you're not in the Discord and you're not in the actual participation, you're not in the screen share, right? To a certain extent, right? You're not actually going to be on the screenshot in regard to whether or not you're participating. So our goal is always to make sure it's going to valid people. And that's the only thing I can control, right? Is ensuring that our access is going to the people who are truly participating.
What? Sorry, we've got a couple hot. I went ahead and muted that. We've got a couple hot mics today. Apologies for that, but no, that's perfectly fair, man. I appreciate what you're saying. You got to focus on what you can focus on. You cannot fix the naysayers, and if people are going to grind, they're going to grind. That all makes a ton of sense. I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to get into some guest questions that we've got building up here. It's just something that personally I wanted to know because, like I said, I hosted you before. I sat through the last one. I thought I was up to speed, and then you mentioned that you guys restructured the roles, right? So now we have this multi-act system. So I just wanted to kind of speak for some of the people who had enlightened role and thought that they were locked in, good to go, and it seems like now with the restructuring, the goalposts have been moved a bit, and it's now for Act 2, and you have a chance at Act 1. So in a way, it almost feels like it was watered down or just kind of downgraded a little bit. So I just wanted to kind of ask about why you guys took that approach, or just what your sort of thought process was going into that.
Yeah, 100%. And like the way we have to look at it is two things. Market conditions massively changed since our last time we talked. Right? If I'm not reacting to market conditions, you should not be putting in my project. Like anyone who doesn't react that way is going to do really poor things. And we could walk through a lot of decisions that I think other projects have made have been very incorrect by not acknowledging the market conditions. So the two things we wanted to recognize is like, yes, you technically have an opportunity now to still be part of Act 1, but your allocation is to Act 2. So because of that, what did we do again? It's a free mint now. Now you don't have to pay anything, right? So that's our way of being able to at least provide some understanding that, hey, there was a change. In doing this change, we're still going to honor you. And the best part here is that if you come into it, you'll still be able to get to Act 2. But I couldn't put everyone into Act 1 because I have to play small supply games. Honestly, I would not be minting any project over 5,000 supply in this marketplace. Like, that's the dumbest thing you could really do. Like, to be very honest, like, if you look at the metrics and replay something like Valhalla, which I think is a fascinating project, if they actually cut down their allocation to 5,000, looking at the advanced data, this would probably be around a 3 to 4 ETH floor. It actually have more total addressable market size with the smaller one because it would have allowed for consolidation correctly with the whales, right? But by pushing out roughly 9,000, they also still own 1,000 supply hidden in the back, right? Through the team, which they're going to have to figure out how to sell through directly. They're now playing this tough game of like justifying the value of the asset with a supply size that doesn't actually meet the demand interest of the market. They've done a really great job. And like when I say really great job, they might be one of the better builders in the space in terms of deliverable stuff. Like the Armory is a great system. I think their pre-sale was a great system. I think their standard marketplace, again, very simple, but was really great system. And we'll see how their long-term tech does. But in the near term, for a PFP project, it's killer. But it's struggling to give you more than 60% returns from mint, right? And that's kind of what you see in this marketplace as well. So what are we trying to do? We're not here for the short run, right? Like in the end, we're here for the long run. And we need to make sure that we're making sure the supply meets that interest and we put a sequence to be able to go there. In the end, our obligation is to protect the brand for the long-term user. Of course, short-term users always want to get greater access, right? Especially if you're in an alpha group as well. But in the end, what you actually want to see is decisions that build for the value of the asset to hold over time. And very few people are thinking through that. And that's at least our approach here and why we wanted to go through it too. So by going to smaller supply, it gives us a little bit of a chance to make sure that the brand holds, there's interest there. And then more importantly, that we essentially can allow the demand to grow into Act 2. And that's the crazy thing these people don't realize, right? A lot of people don't realize by adding Act 1, it actually gives you greater value of whatever that Act 2 asset potentially can be, especially if we're able to execute, especially at the level that we're at as well. And the best part is so many Enlighten users are already getting access to Act 1 if they're participating. Because if you actually look at a lot of the allocation we did, like I'll be very honest, like if we could do this again, we wouldn't be doing a ton of partnership allocations in the future. It's actually one of the worst performing things for projects. We've actually been tracking this about 7 different projects to see what does allocations look like for private communities. And what you actually end up realizing, those private communities actually aren't aligned to the actual product and the goals and the visions. Right? What ends up happening is they tend to be very short-term holders as well. So it's actually one of the poorer allocations you can do unless you're getting whales from that specific community to be able to kind of grab up a larger amount of the supply. So that's the honest thinking on how all of these kind of acts and structures are. It's the right reaction to a market that honestly still has a lot more contagion to fall out. And that's our thinking on how we reacted accordingly.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like you guys, as a team, you're making decisions that will impact we'll say, floor value of the assets, right? You guys saw the market and you made a call. You said, nobody's going to want it if it's a big supply. But that is confusing, though, just because, people like myself, right? So I did eventually engage in the quote unquote time ruggery of like the exclamation point commands and doing my blessings and stuff like that. I did eventually get your enlightened role, I think through people recommending me, offering up blessings and stuff like that. But that whitelist is now for Act 2, right? And you just said Act 2 is the bigger supply, and nobody would want to mint a bigger supply at the moment. So that does feel a little bit bad, I guess, just as somebody who did put in the time and was whitelisted, and then it's like, oh well, you're whitelisted, but it's for the other thing, it's just kind of feels like a bait and switch just a bit.
Yeah, fair if that's how you think about it. And I'll be blunt back. I think that's a really poor take on 2 reasons, right? What I'd want to say is one is like your allocation is now free as a mint, and it was a paid before. So essentially what you're seeing is that the brand is actually protecting your Act 2. The second thing you're also seeing is that you're now getting a larger supply pressure to be able to either access Act 1 or more importantly realize there's a chance that the asset value is actually going to sustain. What you want to recognize is, do you want an asset that just comes to you for the free mint or the paid mint initially and goes straight underwater? Or do you actually want an asset that grows in value as well? And don't get me wrong, almost everyone in this market thinks short term in that mindset, right? And like I hear what you're saying and I hear what you're looking at. But if you're actually a part of this Discord, what you'll realize is almost every enlightened user that has actually been participating in it is actually massively embracing this, right? And it's this under culture of like external allocation versus internal allocation. And like, to be very transparent, this is actually what I think a lot of projects get wrong. They're giving external allocation. Like, look at all my DMs I get on Twitter is like, I want 5 whitelists. I'm like, why? Who are you? What do you want? Do you even understand this project? And this is actually what ends up hurting a lot of these projects up front as well. So don't get me wrong, you could definitely feel that, in your judgment of what is value of something you're getting, that, hey, I was much more comfortable getting Act 2 and be willing to do a paid mint rather than getting access to Act 2 and now a free mint. Absolutely. That's a fair perspective if that's what you want to hold. But in the end, right, I have to do what's right for the business. And what's right for the business is ensuring that we meet supply and demand in a meaningful manner. And this is what I'm building for. And what I'm building for is, holy shit, do you see where the largest community period in this space? It's not even close. So what you actually recognize is that, imagine the amount of people clamoring to get in now. Imagine what that could look like with a successful Act 1 launch and what that will do for Act 2 as well, potentially as well. So that's our thinking and that's our reasoning. I think the take that you have is fair in the way that you assess value, but I don't think that's the actual way, because you're looking at it from a trader perspective than a builder perspective, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my perspective is coming from a person who, is active in the space, an active trader, but also not a ton of time to devote to a lot of different projects that I do think are interesting or I believe in the team. I just can't. There's not enough hours in the day, right, to allocate to engage and support in all the different projects that I believe in. And just in response to one comment you made, I will say nobody wants to mint something and then it go to zero, right? That's never anyone's intention. Anytime you mint something, it's with the confidence and faith in the team that they're going to continue to provide value, right? So that's just inherently what the setup is if you're minting something. But that's fair. No, I understand. You guys have to make your decisions. You have to look at the whole. You have to focus on your community first, not speculators and people on the outside. But I still feel it's a fair question to ask and just kind of get the information out there. I'm going to move on here a little bit to some guest questions just because we've got a few and I want to make sure we get through all of them. And one of them actually is about information. So we had a question here. It's wondering if there's more documentation rather than word of mouth for the project. They visited links to the servers and looked around, and while most of these specific details that get talked about on Spaces aren't found anywhere, it would help for someone like me who listens to the Spaces while working, etc. But I don't have my pencil and binder to take down information. So, is there a place that we can get, sort of concise, bite-sized, or just a full, comprehensive, even white paper for all this information?
Yeah, it won't be a white paper. I think that's like the worst thing that Web3 again also tricked everyone into doing. But yes, it will be visual content. So over the next 48 hours to 72 hours, you'll see us kind of build that up. That's kind of where we have operational debt, and we'll be very honest about that, as this community just massively blew up. So it's been really fun trying to play catch up. But that's also why, we're sharing slides like this to help people understand role breakdowns. We'll be sharing more slides on what King's Oath is and what those structures are as well. But the reason why I tell you a white paper is wrong is that the white paper ruins the exact point of the storytelling and the fantasy of what's happening. Don't get me wrong, there's actually really important information that needs to be shared, and we need to be better at documenting that up front. So we need a new onboarding doc. We need to make sure there's 10 key visuals of what's been happening. We're also going to be doing weekly recaps starting this upcoming week as well. So that, again, as a user yourself, you can still come back into the server once or twice a week, get the key information. And again, you could read it asynchronously whenever you want, or you could also join the synchronous calls if you choose to do so. We're building for both of those user personas, right? And in the end, what's really important to recognize is that as a consumer-based brand, right? What are we trying to do? We actually are trying to capture attention. We're not trying to capture ETH. That's actually what most people forget. So we absolutely understand that some people have less time than money, right? And some people have more money than time. There's a relationship there. So that's also why we've created, the Tribe Diamonds as an opportunity for whales to be able to participate if they would like to. There's going to be other entry points that kind of come along that side. But in the end, what we need to do better, and it's absolutely coming up in the next few days, is you'll see all the key information coming out as a weekly basis. We also do a weekly recap session as well in our Discord too, every Monday. So that's also a good one to come in. And then we also have our town halls on two different time slots on Tuesdays as well. One at roughly 10 a.m. Pacific, the second one at 6 p.m. Pacific. So we allow for both time zones to exist. So again, if there's only one place to join, it's that. And that's what we actually tell people, honestly. If you don't have that much time, only join the one or two critical ones in the participation in the event. Because if I'm building a game, or if I'm building a gamified universe, don't I only want users who have time or have the potential for time? right? Like, why would I not be optimizing for that? And that's what I think a lot of people don't recognize when you're trying to build a game. That's the exact user I want, the person who has more time at the moment right now. Because again, if I'm building an engaging experience, I want to be able to potentially capture that time. So what you're actually seeing is our Discord is kind of mirroring the product opportunity that we're going after. And this is why almost all Web3 games are failing. They're not building session experiences that match their current holder base, right? So what happens? Like, even look at Freeman's like Pirate Nation. If you go look at Pirate Nation, they literally have one of the most innovative game mechanics I've ever seen for an L2. They figured out a way to remove signatures from a game and still make it on chain. Brilliant. Brilliant design. I know we all hate Polygon, but that thing actually makes Polygon somewhat interesting. Outside of bridging these assets, that's the only thing you need to do. But look at their key metric. 48% of their users still haven't bridged over because they don't care about the game, right? Yeah. And that's the other problem that ends up coming into all of this market.
Yeah, shout out to Cooltopia for front running them on the no signature L2 by a few months. All right, so it sounds like docs are on the way. Not a white paper, but some sort of maybe infographic, something like that for onboarding. The next question I think is in reference to Act 1, King's Oath. So is that going to happen in the game, or is that going to be a Discord event? And if it is in the game, what platform will your game be on?
So what it is, it's a gamified experience, right? The way we want to think about it, it's more passive than active. So what you're essentially going to do is a joint community experience that's going to require some Discord, some browser. That's essentially what you're building across those two platforms initially. And it's not this game where you're thinking like, hey, I need to go play my favorite Call of Duty game or anything like that. I think there's a new definition of a game that's being created in Web3, or at least being more emergent in Web3, right? Which is this idea where, what are trader games, right? And what are trader games in this marketplace? It's a game where you're interacting with interesting decisions to understand, do I keep this asset? Do I trade this asset? Do I sell this asset? And what are the other decisions that I could do to increase the value of that asset over time? That's a game, right? So what is our experience more akin to? It'd be like what you see with Digidagaku. We have a little bit more interactive and a little bit more interesting, but when you actually see what they did with their initial events, it's actually the right pace. You're only doing 1-2 actions a week. You're making some interesting hard decisions. We're going to kind of speed that up a little bit more, and then also bring in community, where there's going to be really interesting decisions where you have to partner with other people in our community to make the legacy of your king even more powerful. So you have to build like kind of a crew, which is going to be really interesting as well. So the product experience is more social in its design than it is like active gameplay. I actually think active gameplay is the worst thing to be designing for in this marketplace right now, because no active game is actually meaningful scaling, especially on L1 ETH. The closest ones you have is probably Wolf Game, which is much more of a trader game. And honestly, the game loop really isn't even out yet. It's been a really, really well designed though product experience, and shout out to them. You know, EtherOrcs is probably the other example, which is pretty interesting. But as you can see from the data, it's really hard to get people to use an L2 that has that many signatures and requires that much active gameplay. Still sits about, under 500 daily active users, realistically sitting under 1,500 weekly active users. And that's about it. So what we're trying to do with the product experience is do something new and interactive where there's a reason for you to come in. There's a sense of social and status, and there's a sense of community design. And in doing so, you'll see something that Web3 has never done before. And that's kind of what we're trying to capture.
Okay, just to refocus on the question. So will Act 1 is just a Discord event? It sounds like it's not going to be in game.
No. Again, it is a game experience across Discord and browser.
Okay, gotcha. So the next question is a lot simpler. It's just win game. So I guess when are we going to be able to play the game?
Again, what do you say is game? Because I'll tell you the game's already started in Discord. Like, the question I'd ask you is, are you saying when Web 2 game? Is that the question? Or
I would say when a game in, I guess, a more traditional sense, interactive media, visual, like a game, like where you press buttons and play.
Sure.
Combat, leveling, experience, adventure, mission, like a game.
In a weird way, that's still our Discord. Technically, our Discord hits all of those definitions. And I just want you to think about that. Hit buttons, make decisions. You have to battle certain people in our Discord as well. Like, all of that is in Discord just right now. So I just want to share that, and I'll talk about more of your direct answer, is this is what the whole market doesn't understand. the type of games that are going to be created in Web 3 are totally different than the previous Web 2. This is why we've all been rugged on every Web 2 game we've ever played that claims to have Web 3. It's not what this market wants, especially L1 ETH traders. You don't have time. So why do you want a game, right? Is the traditional game that I think you're trying to get to. But let's continue with the question as you mentioned.
Yeah, that actually perfectly leans into, well, real quick, talking about games and game loops, I will say there's a game that released this month called The Beacon. It isn't on L2, it's on Arbitrum. Yeah. They released with just straight up their game loop. There was nothing else. It's just the game. You go in and you play the game, and they ended up, I think, minting 42,000 initial pieces. So there was some success from just letting people jump in and play the game and see that it's fun, right? So I do think that there is an opportunity there for people that go game first as opposed to, go ahead.
Yeah, on L2s though. That's the big thing that you're missing in the question. I agree. If you really want to build an active game, you're going to Arbitrum, IMX, maybe you could get away with it on Solana as well. And then potentially Polygon, but I don't think Polygon's the right play. Absolutely, if you're building for those markets, you remove the cost friction that essentially you could build more active users in those worlds. The question that I'd ask is, do you think Beacon would have worked on Ethereum with active gameplay? I don't think it would. I'm almost 100% sure it wouldn't. So the question that you have to ask, right, is like, what type of game are you actually building for which audience? And almost no one thinks about this, right? Because almost everyone is kind of like an armchair designer at this point, right? Where they're thinking like, I want my Call of Duty in like L1 ETH. Like, again, sure, like it would be great that we have a budgeted studio with 6 years of timeline to be able to build a product that's strong and be able to add Web3 to it. But again, that's not going to happen in this time horizon. So what I would actually note is like, what is an L1 game to you that you play? I would actually be very curious to hear, like, what's an Ethereum L1 game that you like?
Yeah, I don't play any games on L1. It's unplayable. The problem hasn't been solved yet, like you mentioned. But I want to flip the question that you just kind of, a rhetorical that you threw out, but I want to actually ask you that question. So what type of game are you designing for what players? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure. So like the first thing we want to ask, right, is like, it's still important to hear that last answer you said. You don't play any games. So then why are you asking for an L1 game is a very important question intrinsically that every trader should be asking. It's this understanding that we all ask for a game, but we're not willing to play a game. And that's a very interesting like design space to kind of dive into. But let's leave that and move to the next question as you kind of expand on that.
Sure. Right? Yeah, sure. I'm playing several games at the moment. They're just not on L1. We did have one office hours response. Somebody said Castaways. So there's an example of a playable game that went gameplay loop first as they released, and they are on L1 as well.
Yeah, and that's actually a very interesting game because most of the people playing it actually aren't the L1 holders, which is actually really interesting. And they've actually found an interesting hack. That's actually the right design primitive that you're looking at. Sure, what is the actual game in that? The game is land ownership, right? Usually as a primary owner, you're not deeply interacting as the landowner, right? You're essentially allowing other people to build on your land, which I think is really smart. And I think that's actually the design you want to build for. What you want to recognize is you're building two games. You're building a game for a Web3 native user that is more Baron-like. It's the idea that you own the early story, the early assets, the early digital value of that ecosystem. And there's a way then to build a bridge to the second game, which is to onboard Web2 active gamers, right? And this is where you're going to see a lot of people think through how to build that accordingly as well. The closest thing we had to like an L1 active game, like that had like pretty large reach, and again, it's now sidechain, is Axie with Ronin, right? And we kind of got to see a little bit of what was happening there. So what we recognize here in this space is that rather than trying to overtly build what we think like the number one game actually in this market could be for L1, it's rather recognizing how do we create asset value where L1 users are excited that other users outside of their ecosystem are willing to play on it. And if you can start figuring out that, this is actually the exact insight that Gabe at Digi is really trying to run through. The opportunity is trying to bridge to Web2 mobile as fast as you can. If you can do that, those are the actual active users you want, users in free-to-play who understand most of these economic things. Don't get me wrong, there's a huge branding challenge to be able to figure that out. So what are we actually building then, right? We're actually building like technically 3 different gaming experiences, and we're kind of increasing the activity value at each level to understand where the market explicitly is going to be. Right. So the first game is going to be much more passive, social, designed through Discord and through a web browser experience, right, where there'll be interesting decisions to make around asset ownership. It's a market trading game. That's essentially the game that we're all playing. What you guys don't realize, Blur is a game, right? Blur is literally one of the best designed games out there right now. Oh, let me go click some buttons, see what assets will hold value. Let me go put a bid here. Let me go see if I can farm all the different rewards that I can. Let me see if there's ways that I could get different floor traits, capture them, resell them in a 2 to 3 day window. Where's the right bids for each of those ones as well? It's literally a game. In every manner, it meets the definition of a game. So that's what you really want to do, is how do you make that prettier, is almost what you want to think about, is how we're thinking about the first game that we're designing. The second game we're designing is what we've already shared a few screenshots of in regard to Lost Realms, where it will have a traditional turn-based RPG battle loop. But the way we've designed it is that we've also allowed for whales to design it. Because this is the other thing everyone overlooks, is like, you realize your primary user is going to own more than one of your assets, right? Like if you actually look at how a lot of these are, they own hundreds of assets. So then you also have this other issue in this design primitive that you have to solve for, is how do I build for a whale? It's like, go look at Pirate Nation. I literally have I only have 10 pirates. I'm not even a massive whale in that by any means. But holy shit, they make me click for every single one. Like, I will not play that game for more than 15 minutes, and I left after that first session, and my guys are still bridged over there, because that's not the product experience I want. As a whale, if I own 10 to 100 assets, what I want to know is, like, how can I do all of them in one click and then be able to go along my way? That's the type of product experience you actually want to start moving towards. So the great thing is that we do have a turn-based action RPG that's essentially inspired by, let's think through, like, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy Tactics, Heroes of Might and Magic. It kind of has those types of influences as well. It's kind of what you would traditionally see in kind of any game input. There's interesting skills, there's interesting formations, there's interesting designs as you build your team of 4 or higher. And then with that, right, you get to actually play a full battle loop on where you're going to be casting your attacks. Very simple, very easy to understand. And then as a whale, if you don't want to deal with any of that, great, click auto battle and it'll do all of that shit for you. And great, if you don't want to do with 100 of your assets, put them all in the same loop and click auto battle and they'll do it for you as well.
Real quick, can I jump in just real quick here? How far along is development for that game? Like, where are we at with that? Yeah. Is there an expected launch for that?
There's no expected launch, right? The way I would say it is, we have a playable battle loop. Like we've already shown screenshots of it. A video will be actually coming out in the next couple of weeks. All the Genesis heroes are already done. All the environment scenes are already done. We already have an early world map already fully working with an open world MMO world map. And when we say MMO, it's very different than a traditional MMO world map, but it is massively multiplayer with real social and real chat as well. So what you will actually recognize is that these are systems that we had for a while. Same thing with Fury. Fury has a full racing loop already done, right? It's not a question of whether or not you can build it. The question is it what the market wants? And that's what we're really trying to identify at each kind of standpoint too.
All right, very cool. Well, we're going to just try and get through a couple more of these guest questions here, just try and capture as many as we can. Now, one of them is in relation to time, and I think time has come up a few times here. It's a focus, it seems, of Lost Realms to sort of capture people that have the time to engage and play and do all that. And one of our guest questions is that, focusing on those that just have time, it may have adverse effects, right? So all the people with unlimited time, like, for example, in the spaces now, they're usually full-time Web3. These people are flippers, right? We're playing the Blur game, as you put it. So why would you not want to build something that reaches the average person to expand those who join in, other than those who have time to, interact and engage on a daily basis, versus people that may just want to pop in and play, once a week or something?
And I think this is probably because you guys maybe don't know the experience as well as you should. And, clearly I have to do a better job about it. But we're not designing it only for people with time. We're just providing them an upside if they do have time. And sure, you could kind of grossly correlate that everyone with time is flippers. I actually think that's the total wrong way of thinking of that. That's not the right correlation there, but I could see why you may thinking that. To be honest, the people who don't have time actually have a higher correlation to be flippers, to be honest, because they're managing so many assets. Right. So it's actually interesting that that's the actual perspective you may hold. While realistically, we actually hold it the exact other way. Those who have time are less likely to be flippers, especially if they're hearing what our vision and storytelling is as well. Don't get me wrong. There's flippers in both of these categories. There's flippers in any high liquid market. But thinking that people who have time are flippers, I think, is probably a naive perspective. So the end question, though, that I think is the right question is like, how do you get people from all different backgrounds to participate? Well, that's the exact things. We have a lot of allocation going to partners. We have a lot of allocation going to like individuals who've been part of like key communities as well. So it allows for other people to be able to get into our world as well, right? So the question I'd ask is, how do you actually determine who's a flipper and who's not a flipper? I don't think time's the right variable, to be very honest, right? And I wouldn't be utilizing that correlation. What I'd really understand who is a flipper is, do they actually understand what you're building and align with it? If so, they're probably a flip. If so, they're probably not a flipper. If not, they probably are a flipper, right? And it's that understanding that if you get people to trust in a brand and find that allegiance, it becomes a lot more exciting. And in the end, that's actually what we're building for as well. And I think this is why the space struggles, is they actually hold tons of correlations that truly aren't representative of the market, right? And this is probably what you need to, like, as a community, probably be better at, is how do you justify and qualify better wallets in this marketplace, right? Is an interesting question. And how do you qualify the right users? But if everything I could tell you of my history is, people with more time are always going to be less likely to be a flipper, right? Especially if it's quality time that they're building. This isn't just a grind for relics. There's no guarantee that if you get the relics, you get anything in our marketplace, right? The way we've designed it. And that's actually the beauty of it, right? Because we're actually doing a holistic understanding of who they are. We're looking at not only their participation, their actual real chat and real communication, and are they helping other community members? We are asking them for their Twitter and their OpenSea in a healthy way, not this idea where I need you to force it and we're doing application meta, but trying to understand if they're real. We're getting them engaged in live chat. What I'm selling them is community. That's actually what we're building here. And that's what most people don't realize, because we've been all overemphasized to be traders, right? And it's this overemphasis as a trader, you almost don't care about any of the communities you're in, right? Unless it's pumping your bags, right? But what we're trying to do is like, what if this community was much greater and you don't even care about the NFT? The NFT ends up being the plus one to this. And then maybe over time that NFT does cool things where the supply is small enough that it's under the demand size, right? The demand continues to outsize the supply. This is what the best long-term builders in this market are actually going to end up realizing really quickly. So, in the end, there's a lot of assumptions. What I would say is like, cool, like, let me know some data. I'd love to talk through this, right? If you actually believe people who spend more time are flippers, like, I'd love to know why. Right? I think maybe what you're probably trying to say more directly is, those who grind just for the grind are most likely being flippers. I think that's right. But that's not our system. I know you may be able to interpret our system like that on the outside, but if you actually look inside, like I just came off a chat with 500 of our internal enlightened individuals. And it's literally people just straight up saying, like, I enjoy being here. This is my favorite place in Web3. And they don't even have an asset yet, right? That's actually what is special. So imagine what kind of relationship you have with that asset that makes it even harder with the community, right? Being so good that it'll make it hard to part with. That's the thinking that we're trying to really design for here in the end. And of course, the game asset should have some really fun utility as well. We think this space has really done almost nothing for gaming. Literally, this market has been really unexciting for gaming. So there's a huge blue ocean to try to get it right. And the best hack you can do is have the best community, especially in a bear market. It's absolutely ridiculous. Our numbers are higher than pretty much everyone in the bull market. That's what's special. And if you think it's just the relic doing it, I think you're underestimating the power of that community. And I would honestly invite you to like come through and like, let me know who you are. I'll walk you through. I'll show you the enlightened rooms and everything like that. Because what you'll realize is, sure, if you come to the top of the gates, holy shit, I have like 10,000 people trying to get in. It's nuts what's happening there, right? But that's not truly reflective of the actual community that's being built in the sub-channels. And that's where you're going to actually end up seeing is that the more attention of yours I capture, the more value you are. So like in the end, every Web2 company has the same metric. What is Netflix's metric? Attention capture, right? Like, who is their number one competitor? According to Netflix themselves, it's Fortnite, because they're competing for attention as well. So it feels kind of strange that we in Web3 are trying to say, like, don't go for the people who give you attention. I would disagree with that statement, and I would show that there's a healthy way to capture attention. Just not a lot of people have done this before, hence the grind kind of application.
Gotcha. Yeah, and just to clarify, I can't tell if you were talking directly to me or the person answering the question, but yeah, I'm going to try and leave my opinions mostly out of it. Just kind of be the voice here for the guest questions going forward. I think what they were sort of getting at was more of, it's not so much who is a flipper and who isn't, and figuring out who is based on variables. It's more of like the process itself is time intensive, right? So if you're of the opinion that flippers have more time, then that would kind of be the antithesis of what is happening now, where the more time you put in, the more relics and stuff you can accumulate and whatnot. And maybe that doesn't have a final bearing on your success or your involvement in the project as an individual. So I guess that's yet to be determined.
My question back to you, no, it's really interesting. I legitimately, these aren't like questions we're bothered by. I think it's actually a really interesting convo. My question to you is, if you get two users and one user only comes into your Discord twice, the other user comes into your Discord 20 times, joins chat, communicates with others, and offers value, which user do you think is intrinsically more valuable?
The latter.
So if that's the case, then the question begs is, sure, we may be overlooking some people that aren't valuable, right? Because that might not have attention, right? And might not have the ability. But if we're providing that kind of context, why would we not always optimize for the latter there is a very important question. I'm not saying we're only doing it for the latter, but we should always be optimizing for the latter, because in this market, attention is actually the right opportunity and right metric, because that's what we're actually rich in. I need to now, of course, make sure that attention is healthy, right? And make sure it's not like, we don't have any shit that I need people to put like, guard, exclamation mark. I know that shit, dude. I did that. I used to go into all these damn chats, grind through. I did Wizards and Dragons. I did the awful House of Goblins way early in the day. I've done all this stuff. I'm not building for that. There's none of that in our chat. There's not even a chat meter to be able to measure like, oh, you're leveling up in chat. We don't even do that shit. So what's actually interesting is that most people are misrepresenting that we're grind, when in reality, we have none of those grind mechanics actually built outside of, hey, we're giving you acknowledgement you participated in a chat. That's all we're doing. And I think if anything, you all should be doing this as well. Like, if any insight I'd give you is like, you as office hours should be finding ways to incentivize your audience to actively be listening to the amazing chats you're doing. And of course you could do that. And you guys, different alpha groups do this as well, or different communities do that. It's like, oh, we're taking a snapshot of who's listening. You'll be able to get access to the allow list. You're doing the same mechanic in most cases as well. And you should try to incentivize more of that, because guess what? Your community gets way, way stronger over time. And I think that's where it gets really exciting. And that's what we've done in 10 days. In 10 days, we have the largest community and honestly the most aligned community. And it's not just in Discord. We could push them anywhere. Like, if you guys want to open up a Discord channel here that's open, and you want us to come in, and I will do an event and share whatever you want, and you leave it open to the public, I guarantee you that I will bring probably more concurrent users than probably any other chat you've ever had before in this. That's pretty powerful that we've been able to get to that in 10 days, right? So that's kind of how we're thinking about it as well. So it's like, between those two, you always optimize for attention. It's not saying that you only optimize for attention, but you always will optimize for attention, right? And we want to find the right ways to do that. And I think we have something pretty special happening in the Discord right now.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair response. I think the only wrench in that, when you're trying to figure out who to optimize for, is the fact that at the end of the day, it's a game. So I think that's the only thing that is maybe confusing people or causing them to just read the optics wrong. Just because when you think games, you think a player base, right? It's not a PFP project or a brand or a community, right? It's a game. So people want to be able to have access without having to commit time. But if we're talking about a whitelist, then it changes the whole dynamic. But I do want to move on, and I'm sorry, man, I could talk about this for hours, but I do want to try and hit as many of these questions as we can before we lose you. Well, there is one question here that was actually echoed by multiple people, so I do want to make sure we get that one asked. And it's about the actual roles. So what can players do to get the torchbearer or oath roles? Is there a clear path to that? Other than just, to participate? And if so, what should people be doing to try and acquire those higher tier roles?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, it's an ascension process, right? So that's the important thing to understand. You kind of want to step through the roles, so you can see kind of in the office hours chats how I kind of showcase that. So the game right now is if you're starting with Redeemed, your game is trying to get into Enlightened. the best way to get enlightened is still this participation. We use this greater participation equals greater access. We do believe in that. And you could showcase participation in multiple ways, right? Participation could be in terms of chat. It could be attending the Discords and relics, right? And it could also be just helping other people and solving problems. Like we've ascended tons of people who found problems for us. And it's like, great, thank you for doing this. You took the own initiative and they're immediately enlightened to the opportunity. It's a community-based project on all those fronts. Is there a hard formula? No. Right? The formula is like be valuable to the ecosystem and you'll be noticed. So the other great thing is we also allow the community to curate people. So enlightenments actually happen through blessings. So we have numerous of our loyal individuals who've been able to be in our world, including torchbearers, council members, overseers, and oath holders. And they now have the ability to bless individuals that they feel that are valuable. So what you're actually seeing in our Discord is that you could click on anyone in our Discord and you'll actually get a certain understanding of what their deemed value may be. It could be based off the relics. It could be based off the early roles they may have captured. It may have been out of a key contribution. It may have been because of their chat value, all of those things. That's one way to participate to be able to get it. Yeah, sorry.
No, very cool. That was perfect. So it sounds like it is more of just engage or open-ended, sort of ambiguous, just community involvement, right? If you're doing the things that the team sees value in, then it'll be rewarded.
Exactly, right? And then there's other ways, right? We'll have bounties are coming out this weekend where there'll be different tasks you could support. If you want to write lore, we're going to bring a bunch of creative people who want to do this. If you want to support with music, if you want to help with collab management, right? If there's someone that you think we should talk to as a project and bring them in, like, dude, our community is the best collab management I've ever seen. We've let them do it. And straight up, I've gotten better intros to people from my community than I ever did with like an actual stack team. It's actually nuts, right? Like I'm talking about like we're about to announce some major blue chip partners that are coming on board because like that's the other thing people forget. Like we have a crazy list of partners already, like an insane list of partners that are already announced. And we have 3 more insane ones to come, right? So you could participate through kind of all those creative tasks as well. And then, you know, the last ways to participate, of course, is owning the NFT, right? Owning a Genesis Pass, which I know is pricey. I'm not saying that it's something that's available and accessible to all, right? But the understanding is recognizing that we can allow everyone to be able to get into this opportunity in different ways. And that's the other thing to understand is like, remember, your roles compound, meaning that if you might not be able to get into this early world, right? The great thing is it's not like we erase your progress. Like, why is grind an awful thing? It's because you work your fucking ass off, you don't get it, and you lose all value, right? Because there's no way to redeem that. This is how we solve grind. We don't have that. If you continue to help and support, and you might not be able to get into Act 1, or you might not be able to get into Act 2, I'm not erasing your history. Your history remains because our Discord is called Something Is Happening. It's where we launch everything, right? So it's where Fury is going to also be allocated, right? And not only Fury, well, we also were talking today early in our chat, you know, we have 3 other universes that are already in like early production with 2 of them already having art fully done. So what is our actual goal and opportunity is that I'm trying to take everyone to the promised land. So again, it might not be the alignment where people don't have time. Like, to be honest, a lot of you are in very exciting, privileged positions. You already have the knowledge, access, and ETH to be able to do almost any other project that you want in this world. So if that's the case, then you shouldn't be grinding for whitelist. You should be trying to understand, is this a project I might want to buy in right at mint? That's really the better framework you should be using because, again, you're right. It's a time trade-off analysis, right? You can choose what you want to do, and that's essentially what we're building it for it as well. So recognize that as you collect roles, you're collecting opportunities for all the future ecosystems that we're trying to build as well. And I think that's where it gets really exciting. And what we're doing is way different. It's not grind because we don't lose your history. Your history compounds with you.
Wow, that leads perfectly into like 2 more questions. But look, I see that we're 10 minutes over the hour, so I just want to do a quick temperature check and just see if we're holding you up from your next call or anything like that. That's, you know, it's
you
no
good,
hard
bro.
feelings.
I got.
We're good.
No,
all
I love this
right,
stuff.
let's go. Okay,
let's go.
Let's fucking go. Okay, so we're gonna try and do a rapid fire. So, real quick, you're just talking about the roles, and one of the questions that we had, guest question again, is there some use in the early roles that we've been given, Mountaineer, Summoner, Researcher, Searcher, Oracle's Blessing, Oracle's Gift, etc., before the engagement farming with relics began, or is being early more important or grinding for relics?
Early is more important. It's already noted. If you go look at how we broke it down in our whisper hints. The idea is earlier the roll, the better. The more complex the roll, the better. Relics are literally the lowest value proposition in our ecosystem. It's just what people want to do. It's weird, right? But we say that very explicitly. So especially if you own all the early 4 roles, like all I would tell you, if you own Summoner, Searcher, Researcher, and Mountaineer, and you own like Oracle's Blessing as well alongside Oracle's Gift, dude, just go grab like 5 relics, like really quickly. And fuck, you don't even need to really be in there, right? You guys could do your little telephone game. You're going to get enlightened. That's insane. That's hugely valuable. And then also those early rolls are going to have their own raffles, their own combo raffles as well. So absolutely, the earlier you are, we honor you 100%. And that's a lot of the advantages of people who might be in this chat. You probably got in pretty early. So we take care.
Yeah, fantastic. Love that. Love taking care of the early people. I was going to say, yeah, the chat is probably split, just so you recognize the audience a little bit. The chat here is probably split between 30% people who were very, very early to your project, and the other 70% are those people you were talking about that just have ETH and they're waiting. They're making their decision right now, right? Whether or not they're just going to buy in once it launches because they just don't have the time. So, but we do have a decent, sizable community of people that were very early to the project and are still active. So glad to see that they're taken care of. One more question. From the same person, guest question. Were you personally involved with this project from the start? I think I know the answer to that, but they're asking because there was only an admin called Something Is Happening.
Yeah, so it's always been me from the start, alongside of it. To be very transparent, and we like to be very transparent, we started Something Is Happening as totally an experiment under totally different Discord IDs because we just wanted to see how we can capture growth in this market. Because you guys actually know we were going to launch Fury first. That was the whole pitch. Fury actually has more development done, right? Fury has a trailer done since April, right? Like we have so much stuff.
Yeah, we saw it.
Fury.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys have seen that. We have full gameplay ready for Fury as well. But Something Is Happening just blew up. And it was just like, oh, let's just test it then. And then when it started picking up, we're like, okay, this is a real thing. Let's fully embrace it and realize like there's a very important growth advantage we have here. And that's where it became this kind of unknown Lost Realms journey. But essentially it was me straight up, like Something was me. And then I changed my name to Saint in there, but that's always been me in the chat.
Very cool. Yeah, I thought I remembered that from the last talk. But yeah, so actually, I'm going to jump around to another person's question because it ties in with what you kind of just mentioned about Fury. Let me find it here. I'm so sorry. Okay, yeah. So why multiple universes at the same time? Why not just focus on one and make it a really good one? I know you mentioned 3 games, one being sort of a marketplace type engagement similar to Blur. Then you have your turn-based RPG loop. I can't recall what the third one was, but why focus on making so many games? And that kind of ties into like Fury, because you guys had Fury almost ready to go, and then sort of pivoted because I guess you realized the hype and the market just response that you got from Lost Realms was so much greater. So you sort of pivoted to that. So why spread yourself so thin and not focus on just really executing the best singular project, like one game that you can do?
Yeah, because I'll be blunt, one game doesn't work. Anyone who tries to do one game in this market will fail, 100%. And the reason I want to share that is it's this insight to understand it's 2 different user behaviors that already exist. Like if you actually look at any mobile game session, right, that you're trying to build, the average user needs to be playing 4 sessions a day of like 10 minutes plus per day and doing that 5 to 7 days a week. Try to get an L1 user to do that. None of you are going to do that. So what kind of game am I actually building for you then? I'm not building for you. So the question that ends up begging is like, is there a singular game that meets the 2 different sessions that a trader wants versus an active gamer wants? And intrinsically, we're seeing the answer is like unequivocally no, right? It doesn't work, right? It's usually choosing like one side or the other. But what you could do is you could build multiple games underneath one brand that builds for different session lengths and session experiences for the targeted users you're going after. And I think this is actually the alpha that the best builders understand. So same thing, Gabe at Digidaigaku is building 2 totally different games, right? Digidaigaku is a whole separate game, and then there's going to be a native mobile Web 2 game that none of you are going to play because none of you are going to care about it as well. Right. And even today, Castaways is technically 2 different games. If you actually go look at the metrics of who's actually actively playing the game versus actively owning the assets, 2 different user bases as well. So, sure, there could be a few games that are going to be able to cross that bridge, but because of the different session length experiences, you run into the same problem of who am I building for, right? So, like, Beacon solved it really well. What Beacon recognized, and I'll give them a lot of credit, but let's see how long this sustains because I think it's going to be really interesting. One is, right, they created open supply. Two, they created an active game that's immediately available. And three, they did it on an L2 where the gas costs are essentially zero, right? Right, which is really, really smart to do. The question now is going to beg is, are traders going to whale that? I'm not sure, right? I don't think that's what that product is actually built for. So then the question is going to be is, will they be able to sustain that with a very deep content treadmill, right? Which is level design. And the way they designed the game is actually really smart. Beacon's literally one of the better projects in the last year in this space, and I give them a lot of credit. And Treasure DAO is actually fascinating. And there's other alt chains that we don't talk about, like Wax. Almost no one talks about Wax, but it actually has the most active gamers out of any network out there right now, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, Wax is wild and slept on. Yeah,
exactly, totally slept on. Alien Worlds, fascinating product there as well, and they had a few other ones like Our Planet and a few others, which is really interesting too. So in the end, our thesis is that you need to build for the audience that is here, right? So there's an audience that is here that we think are L1 traders. We think there's an audience that is on L2s that are kind of individuals who are looking for some type of active game loop. And then we have the audience that we believe are just Web 2 natives that don't give a fuck if it's an NFT, but would love the NFT as a bonus. And through those three, you could actually bridge them under the same universe. And if you could do that right, this is actually where you'll get the next Marvel worlds, the next Disney worlds, like that kind of thought process, because you're building for every user experience correctly. So the great thing is like the early product experience that we're building for like Web3 natives is actually the easiest one. And they kind of increase in complexity over time. And the advantage we have is our Web 2 and Web 3 games that we're essentially building, sorry, our Act 2 and Act 3 games that we're essentially building, they're built on the same engine, right? Where we built it on Unity, we kick one to browser because we think as people on L2s will prefer browser-based games. That makes a lot of sense. And then we could kick that over to mobile when we want. So it's not actually as hard in terms of the deployment structure of what you're building. The key is being able to design the sequences of value to be able to connect between all three under one intrinsic world, which is the real design challenge which we've been working on.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Cast a wider net, acquire more people with different interests. Love it. All right. Moving on to the next one. So it seems like a big task, right? You're building a lot of games. So I'm going to combine two questions here. One person asked, are there any details regarding the team besides just random names on the website? And someone else asked, how big is your team, the one that are building these multiple games?
So great questions. We'll be fully doxed prior to mint. Like that's definitely what we're planning on. So you could see more of our backgrounds. We do have early decks that share who we are, what we are. I'm essentially doxed. It's not that hard to find out who I am at this point. The great thing is like we have literally VP C-level founders that have worked on some of the biggest games ever in the space, especially mobile gaming. We have executives who used to work on, like for me, I used to work on CSR Racing, the largest racing game ever on mobile. We have team members who worked on Game of War, the largest MMO of all time, on mobile as well. We have our tech engineers are literally the lead engineers at LucasArts and a handful of other VR gaming and mobile gaming companies as well. So what's great is that we do have that pedigree and background to a certain extent. Of course, there's more information and more diligence, but it's actually people who've been hands-on as either directors or higher, right, all the way up to like C-level and founder as well. My background, raised a handful of venture capital. I've been able to be CEO, VP of growth, monetization, and design at a handful of studios. I've worked with numerous gaming studios, including EA, Wildlife Studios, Natural Motion, and Beyond Games. Outside of that, similarly, we work very closely to a handful of VCs and private equity firms for diligence on both Web3 and Web2 products, including guys like JP Morgan and Growth Curve Capital. So what we have is like a good experience there. We can, of course, share that more, and we'll definitely share that more as well as we kind of expand. And then, sorry, there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say good shit. That's perfect. Yeah, docs prior to mint, and it sounds like you guys have been vetted by some other notable people as well. So that's always good. Was there more you wanted to add, or can I move on to the next question? I know we're running low, so I want to try and knock out these last couple.
Go for it.
Okay, sweet. This one is really broad. So feel free to take your time with it, but or as concise as you want to be. But what is the purpose of your company? So how do you view the company's purpose, rather?
Yeah, great question. Concise answer is create more owners in our world, right? Like, I want to create more humans to be part of the ownership class. Like, if you understand like the intrinsic nature of why I care here is that the wealth inequality gap is created by those who own and not own. And this is like become widening and widening. I think Web3 has an opportunity to reshift that, where there's an opportunity to be part of the ownership class way sooner. And ownership could be as simple as owning an NFT. But being able to understand that, I think, is really, really important and really, really valuable. And if you could start training people as early as, 15, 18, 21, right, whatever the age may be that they get in to NFTs to understand that as ownership principles, I think you build a much more informed world. And I think you also provide more equitable access to all. So what is the long-term vision? Like, I want to onboard the masses to Web3. Like, I really do believe gaming is going to do it, but I also believe social is going to do it. And that's kind of the way we're a little bit different than most, because social isn't sexy to talk about, but it's probably the most important metric and important systems whenever you're seeing almost any technology revolution. And that's kind of what we're really building for in the end. I would love to build multiple entities and properties, right, that are exciting to us. But yeah, the vision is just simple on that front. Let me know if you want more clarity beyond that.
No, I think that's fine. Another question is, since people have linked their wallets with the Discord, will the selection of roles be based on the weight of their wallets? Weight with quotes around it. Not really sure what that's implying there. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think it's
like you understand
the value of the wallet.
Oh, gotcha. That would be that would be. Wallet. Ooh, yeah, that would be nefarious. Okay, good deal. Glad we asked that then.
And that's why we also tell people is like, you're okay putting in a different hot wallet. That's not an issue. The wallet capture was literally just an action to just see how many users were just active at that point. But yeah, we don't do wallet measurement. That's not an interesting thing. If anything, the only thing we would ever do with that is just understanding, like, are some of these wallets chained, right? Which is just more for like fraud deduping, but not value assessment.
And I guess circling back, there's your hidden variable, the metric you're trying to figure out if somebody's a flipper or not. It's their wallet address. Moving on, Scottco asks, what are your favorite projects in Web3 that you think have executed well, both pre and post mint? Sounds like you had some love for Castaways and Beacon. Are there any other ones that you think did well pre and post?
Yeah, I mean, Gabe didn't do well pre, but he did an amazing post. Right? Like, no one knew when Daigaku dropped, right? It was really poorly done and it wasn't curated, free mint, but he did a fantastic job. And again, it's a lot easier to do it when you add $200 million to an equation, but the dude lives and breathes what he does. Like, he's an absolute inspiration. I think he understands a lot of this stuff. He has a lot of harder views. Like, I don't know why he really wants to go after Sam Altman and like AI and stuff like that as a part of his conversation, which is interesting, right? But like, in the end, I do respect the hustle and the grind that he's putting everything on the line on behalf of his community as well. A few others that I would really like call out, like disregarding the FUD part of it, like, I give Valhalla a lot of credit. Valhalla continually ships for just a PFP project. Like, I'm generally bearish on whether or not they're going to build a streaming platform to compete. That's a hard task to do versus Twitch. But holy shit, as a PFP project to do pre-sales, to do your own marketplace really quickly, to be able to add this armory feature for reroll traits, like, whether or not those were perfectly designed, what they are is they're incredibly well executed in their quality. And that's something that you want to see in a team. And, even though they went out with, I think, a larger supply than I would have, they've maintained it, right? To a certain extent, it's going to be a lot of volatility with that type of supply. So you're going to see a lot of shifts. But for an actual PFP project, they've actually delivered. And I do think it's actually one of the best art. Like, honestly, if they came before Azuki and launched, they would have been Azuki, to be very transparent, in my opinion. I think Azuki is amazing, right? It was more about who got there first. But like, I think it is of that quality. I think the rares could have been a little bit more rangy. That's the only thing I would have wanted from Valhalla's collection. But shout out to them. They deserve a lot of credit. Outside of that, the only other people that like really, really come to mind is like Frank the Gods. Like, I do, he might not be perfect in all of his decisions, but like, I think there is this superpower because like, in the end, if you could be a spokesperson and the CEO visionary for your company in a meaningful way, Elon's already kind of set this as an example, even though we all know Elon's kind of now in a very interesting, crazy. But in general, that is his superpower. Elon had free ability, like free impression value, to be able to push him to any direction you wanted, right? Which I think is so fascinating. And I think what you now see is guys like Gabe understanding that, right? Like, even though I'm not a huge fan of like follow, retweet, respond, right? But he marched his way up to 100,000 followers. Like, that's a growth hack. And Frank's kind of done this really well for Solana as well, and they kind of put their essential brand on the line. So I put all those people really at the top. If there's anyone like on the smaller side that I think is really interesting, like again, I still think Pirate Nation is interesting, even though I don't think their game is for the right market. The tech is brilliant, and the team is actually really thinking through this stuff, so I'm really keen to see where they go. And then, yeah, shout out to Wolfgame. Like, the fact that Wolfgame has survived after everyone who tried to knock them off has died, like, fucking OGs right there. Like, that is a testament to great builders and great founders. The crazy thing is, right, we still don't even have a, right, we're waiting for the game. They had the mini games, right, which was interesting. But they essentially are showcasing to you that their way that they built community is quite different. And it's still sustained, even though, it's been, I don't know, 11 months since Mint, 14 months since Mint, I can't remember, right? And the game still hasn't been delivered, but the community is hyped as ever. So I think that's really exciting. So those would be some of the names that quickly come to mind, but I'm sure there's a handful of others that are worth adding. Oh, and I do want to shout out, like, oh my God, Tyler Hobbs, Dandelion, like that combo was legit on the art side. I want to see more stuff like that on the art side as well. Love what they're doing. My dream is to one day get a Fidenza. Like, that's my grail. So I also shout them out on the art side too. I thought that was an amazing execution for QQL.
Yeah, that's a really good list, man. Those are some great projects to pull examples from and look up to. Yeah, I agree with you too on almost all accounts. Yeah, Pirate Nation. I'm still Farmvilling it up over in Pirate Nations, but yeah, it definitely leaves something to be desired. And Wolfgame, we have a pretty big community.
I will send you my 10 pirates. Yeah, I'll send you my 10 pirates so you could do it for me, man. Because I fucking won't click that shit, but I still am impressed with that game.
Yeah, hey man, it's not as long of a grind as some of the other games, as far as actual playing. But yeah, look, I just want to take a quick moment, man, because we're coming up on our time here, and just thank you for first of all coming here today, and then also extending the time and taking some of these tougher questions. I think when you do your third MVHQ AMA, you're going to start to get some more tough questions. So I appreciate you staying in here with all the punches and stuff. One final thing that I wanted to ask and just throw out there, because honestly, this is one of the most engaged AMAs that I've hosted personally, as far as the amount of questions and just the insight that we've got from it. So appreciate that. But I did want to at least note that to you as well, and then just see, the most important question I think that we've asked today is going to be this next one. So definitely think about it here and let me know what your thoughts are. But just win MVHQ Relic.
It's already built. Are you guys ready? That's the question. Are you in my Discord? I already got this ready for you guys.
I think they're ready. Saint.
Okay, give me just a second. I'll set up the room real quick. Let me just jump to my other Discord real quick. So let me just make sure the secret chamber. I got to open up the secret chamber for each of you guys real quick. Make sure you guys know how to use the command. Yeah, /secret.
Oh, we're savvy. But yeah, guys. So yeah, when you get in, once the room opens, /secret, it'll auto prompt for the etching. You just click that and then type in the word and hit enter. It's so funny though when seeing the chat whenever you drop these and just like the crazy stuff that people type in there, just completely missing the mark. But yeah, it's interesting to see each time.
It's pretty funny, man. I've really been enjoying it as well. Okay, let's do it like this. Give me 1 second. I'm just getting it set up. What do you want the password to be?
MVHQ.
All right, well, don't do it MVHQ. Everyone will guess that because the relic is called MVHQ.
Oh shit!
Give me like another word. You want top hat? Like one word, TOPHAT?
Yeah, we want top hat, all one word.
Okay,
I think everyone wants that. Yeah, that's what everyone is saying. Yep, they're all saying yes.
Awesome. I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes. Remember, there's a 2-minute cooldown, so if you fuck it up the first time, you'll have one more chance to get it. But again, it's /command. Get ready to use it. Period is 3 minutes. And it is now active. So you can now use the password is TopHat, TOPHAT. Use the / command secret to be able to add that in. By doing so, you should simply have ability to have an etching, and upon getting the etching, you will get the gatekeeper. If the gatekeeper is thinking, you've got it. Like, you're done. You don't have to worry about it. It just takes a while because we're literally breaking Discord on all of this stuff to assign all the roles correctly as well. So that should be your exclusive relic. The cool thing as well is that by owning that relic, guess what? You guys are going to have your own custom raffle here as well with a much higher chance of being able to get it, right? Because you guys are the only ones that are participating. There's going to be other few people who are scraping this shit, but that's the fun part is that whenever we do any giveaways, we'll confirm with you guys, are they an MVHQ member? If they are, great, we'll give them the prize. And we'll do some dope prizes. Like, I'm not just saying we're going to give you allow lists and stuff like that, which are always dope. Like, we'll give you guys some other cool ways to win. You'll see it come out in just a bit where it'll be assets that have some interesting value as well. So yeah, massively appreciate you guys being here. Love that you guys are playing around with our game. I promise you it's not grind. And if you want to learn more, like, straight up, hit me up. Like, I mean, hit up TopHat and say like, hey, we'd love to have another small private conversation. If you guys want to chat more about this and learn about this, I'm always down to come back for just like a 5-10 minute group for like 30 minutes. Like, I'm down for that.
Hell yeah, man. Hey, you come through here for the 4th time, we are going to kick your ass. You understand?
But that's what I love, man. Come hard. You should be asking this shit. Do you guys hear what I did on the AMA to Saint Robotica? Like, I get it. If I'm asking this shit, like, you guys should go listen to my Saint Robotica AMA because I was like, I want to ask these same questions. So I don't fear any of this stuff because I think it's the exact shit we need to hear from every fucking founder out here. Because again, if I'm asking for your time and if I'm potentially asking you to buy into a project on secondary market, right? I need to make sure I have justifications across the board. So like, I love it, man. I want to get in the trenches on these conversations and I appreciate it because you guys asked some of the harder ones and I like that. And hopefully there'll be some few more ones as well too. But I think what you'll see from us is that over time, especially over the next few weeks, a lot of these pieces are going to start connecting in a very different way than the rest of Web3. So massively appreciate how many people are already here listening as well. The fact that you guys care means a lot to us. And I hope that you'll see from everything we do, we're going to put it in honor of the holder.
Absolutely, man. We love that. Thank you for showing the love to MVHQ. And yeah, we ask the hard questions because we care. This shit matters to us, right? We do it all day, every day. We hear from all these project founders and we compound all that information. So yeah, if we're throwing it back at you, it's because we care. I do want to point out though, you may have a botting problem going on. So people are spamming that TopHat. I don't know if people are just monitoring the secret chamber or what, but it's not us. It's not us. Yeah.
No, but that's perfect for us. You want to know why? Because then I know who to ban, dude. It's my Autobot. Like, don't you guys realize that? Like, I've designed this whole system to know who's getting the wrong relics. Great. This is the dude just scraping. Banish, right? Remove the roles. Beautiful. We take screenshots of everything. So we've thought through the system quite a bit. But yeah, a lot of people want relics, right? And we get it. That's always going to be a small part of our user base. But in the end, what you're going to realize in the structure is we're going to have a lot more real users than probably any other user base out there.
Gotcha. Understood. Yeah, I didn't know if that was just a good data point for you or not. We're pretty good at keeping our walls closed. So just the speed at which people were throwing TopHat in there just shows me they're probably just watching the chat. It might be on the Discord end. But hey, it sounds like you guys are ready for that. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
100%. Good deal. That's what they are, right? Because that's the only way we could build a system. We can limit it, but because some of you guys are not enlightened, I needed to open it up to everyone, and that's fine. But yeah, man, like we'll do exclusive raffles. The people who I know aren't MVHQ won't be an issue, and then if any of them win it, we'll banish them and reroll, and you guys will get the reward directly to your community as well.
Good shit, man. Beautifully done. Yeah, great job today. Again, thanks for taking the time, man, and extending it even. So yeah, we really appreciate that. And if we need to do more talks in the future, if our community is hungry for it, then yeah, man, we'll see what we can do. Reach out.
Amazing. Appreciate it all, guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Yep, you too. Thanks, Saint. Take it easy.
Peace.